Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 20 of Down the Pub podcast, brought to you by Wolves of Westminster. I am your host, Peter Simpson, contributor to Wolves of Westminster, and I, of course, run the Haryan Gláeddyv channel. I'm here once again with the editor of Wolves of Westminster, Patrick Timms. Hello, Patrick.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. And we're also joined by Peter Barnes, contributor to Wolves of Westminster, and commonly on Talk TV too. Hello, Peter.
Yep. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Nice to see you guys.
Hello, good. So, lots happened again this week. Once again, I think these would be some of the first conversations you have in a pub again, but, well, I'm bored of saying that joke now, so we'll just move straight on into what I want to talk about, which is somehow the High Court has decided that despite Palestine Action doing some of the most terroristy things I've seen, maybe not the most terroristy things, but clear acts of terrorism, i.e., destroying military equipment for the RAF and, of course, breaking a policewoman's spine, the High Court have decided actually it's a perfectly legitimate political group, which, thankfully, I have to say, one good point on Labour, because we're going to get into all the bad too, don't worry. Shaban Mahmood has come out to say we are going to challenge this decision, which I think we absolutely should, because that group should not be operating as it does in the United Kingdom or anywhere.
Yeah, I'm going to say I completely agree. I think the way that this was reported often really irritated me. It's as though it was a kind of act of vandalism. It wasn't. It was technically sabotage. That is an operative RAF base at Brighton. It's designed for ready action. So basically, the things there will be needed as and when they are needed. This meant that operational capacity was diminished, when Britain's role in the world was diminished. This was not an act of vandalism for Palestine. This was an act of sabotage, and it should have been dealt with that much harsher than it ever was. I have to admit, I thought the government was very slow to react, but also the way, like I said, the media reported it, I thought was lazy, and I don't think they realised the scale of the problem that they actually caused. Because obviously we don't really talk about international politics and the military and security issues in a very grown-up way in this country. So I have to admit this. I have to admit, I think I am surprised by this decision. I thought that the court would be a little bit more sensible, but then it's Britain, it's 2026, so there's me being silly again.
Clown decade, as I say, yeah.
Oh, you always like to say that, don't you? I mean, yes, I think it's quite right. You know, this is the sort of thing that I like to think of it. I mean, we all have our own individual expressions of this kind of thing, hasn't it? Mine is sort of opposite land or upside down land, where this is exactly the sort of thing that you go back and you think, well, no, of course that would be a totally insensible thing. You wouldn't expect that to happen. But now you actually do expect that sort of thing to happen. It's happened. This kind of silly nonsense has happened that many times that you'd almost be surprised if the decision had not been issued.
I also, it's also the problem of obviously. We had the break-in, of the facility. I think it's owned by Israel, but they were arming Israel anyway, or helping to arm them. Which there's about 5 things I want to talk about there. But the first one being, obviously, the man who did break a policewoman's spine got off because of a jury, and yet this High Court decision is by judges, which makes everyone think, well, if juries aren't giving us sensible decisions, and judges are consistently giving us poor decisions as well, where is justice in Britain? And that seems like a horrifically large problem to fix. Because I don't know many people who are in the mindset of you are guaranteed justice in Britain, or even likely to get justice at this point. I know plenty of people that don't even bother with social media because they know of the problems you can get into there if you say things that are too spicy, and then even, you know, there's other people who are just worried that if they get their wallet stolen or whatever, with the police even going to bother. But this all comes down to, you know, David Lammy might be right about juries not being useful, but judges...
Never say that again. Sorry to interrupt. Never ever say that David Lammy is correct. You know the rule here.
I do. Go on,
if I could just sleep in on a couple of points there, Peter I'm reminded of a line from Yes Prime Minister where some Appleby says, you know, sometimes the jury will just acquit out of sheer bloody mindedness. You know, so there is that. I forget what the other point was. Never mind. Carry on.
I'll pick up here because I think you make a really good point here about, is there actually justice in the UK? Because I think the one thing you have to always remember is justice has to be seen to be done. People have to feel that there is a sense of fairness. And I was on about this on a show the other day, actually, that Britain just doesn't seem fair. There's absolutely nothing that seems fair about people getting up and going to work for 9 million people to sit at home and not do anything. You know, it doesn't really feel that no matter how much you put in, you're going to get your fair share back, or even get anywhere near that amount of piece of the pie. And I think that is the real crux of what we're really seeing now, is why everything feels like it's falling apart, is because the people who should care are saying, well, why should I? Because I'm just being taken for an idiot most of the time. And I think that is a real problem. And I don't know if it's a policy thing, if it's a culture thing. I don't know how we fix that, but I do think it all kind of ties in together. The kind of the economy, the sense of no justice, the fact that your friends feel they can't say things on social media. Like, in what world are we living in where that is Britain? It makes no sense to me as to how far we've fallen in a very short amount of time. I mean, that's the more impressive bit, really. If you want to give us a little bit of credit, is the fact that we fell very far, very fast.
I'll leap in again, sorry, because I remembered what I was supposed to say earlier. I do apologise. As to what you were saying, as to social media. Now, I know of a person, well, not name, who is attempting to be selected to stand for a councillorship in North London for Reform UK, and he's been rejected twice from vetting because of tweets he's previously made. So now he is finding that he needs to go back and delete a lot of things. So he's having to, because there are services you can pay for will automatically do that for you. And it's one of those where, I mean, I think it's just, one, if you've been through the process at least once before, they're going to remember you. So if you just delete your tweets, I mean, it's not like they don't know that you had that history just because you've expunged it now. But at the same time, yes, there was all ages ago and that sort of thing. But it is just one of this is why I really don't post very often. I really don't. And I will say it again, I've said it on this show at least twice before, that line from Giles Brandreth on Have I Got News For You. It's a mistake that politicians make saying anything at all. So I only say anything, one, when I've got something to say, and two, when it's, and as Peter, as you will agree, I'm sure, in IT terms, when we talk about minimizing your attack surface in terms of cybersecurity, that's exactly what it is in politics as well. I mean, with that said, there are people who seem to make a living out of being punchy and opinionated and that sort of thing, but then they can come a cropper later on. And of course, Peter B, you'll be on talk later on tonight, I gather, and good for you. But it's one of the reasons I say that is because I've been told before by one of the producers that, well, we don't seem to book you very often anymore because you're too, well, these are not his words, but basically something along the lines of you're too rational, too fair-minded. You need to be more punchy. You need to be more, because I'm not stupid. I'm not going to be. I'm not one of these people who, for a start, even looks very good. That helps in Westminster, just as it does in Hollywood. But it's it's true. But also, there are some people, and she's enough of a public name. I'll name it Sophie Corcoran. Now, how did she get anywhere? She got somewhere because she was willing to come on and say incredibly racy, not racist, but racy, as in punchy, spicy things. And there are some people, especially the younger ones, who've made entire careers out of turning their commentary into that. That is not what I want to do. I consider Wolves to be a serious publication that takes serious views and isn't just going to fall into one camp or another. Yes, we have a centre-right alignment. Anyone who reads us knows that. But I've also published pieces I don't agree with. During the whole BLM stuff of about 6 years ago, I published a piece by one of our only female authors who is black and said we should be taking Black Lives Matter more seriously. Now, I could already see what was coming around the corner, so I didn't exactly agree with that piece, but I published it as editor because I don't only publish things I agree with, just like I don't only do things I have to do. Okay, so, and this is how we maintain balance, and this is what we should be looking for in British political commentary. Quite frankly, I feel the country is crying out for more of that. So less extremism, more balance, which doesn't, and but balance, just to come back to Peter S.'s point, and I'll shut up in a second, is balance does not mean what has happened in the courts this week. That is not balance.
No. I think, to draw it out a little bit, I think the issue with when it comes to the Reform UK is they know that their candidates are going to have their entire lives backcombed by the press. They're going to have, teams of people from Labour and the Lib Dems, the Greens are going to go through everything anybody's ever said, and it will be the front page of every kind of campaign poster. That's why they've got to be so extra diligent. I don't blame Reform for doing that. I feel sorry for the people that have got caught up in it, because I know a lot of people who wanted to be candidates for MP and for councillor, and they've not been able to do it because of the previous tweets. But I think on a broader bit, I do think you're right that we lurch to the extremes in both directions. But I think neither side is willing to budge. It's not just the left that's the problem. I think the right has a big problem of this as well, where, the idea of free speech means, I just want to hear the things I agree with, and I don't like the things that the things I don't agree with. They should be on another channel. It's like you can't complain about the BBC and then want your own channels to be exactly what you want. You either have free speech or you don't. It's not one or the other. But when it comes to this decision, I can't see the logic in it, and I think that's the problem. I cannot understand on a fundamental common sense level how this is correct. I think that again is one of the big problems. Is decisions are made that fly in the face of common sense to a lot of people, and it's just nobody's explaining it either. That's the big problem. Nobody's come out and said we made this decision because of. And I think if people do that, I think the country would go like, I don't agree, but I can kind of see where you're coming from. Like it's the whole reason now that when trains are late, they say, it's because of this, it's because of train crews late. It's because you then know that it's not just late for no reason. There is a reason for it. There's a whole psychology behind all of this stuff. But I do think the government, fair enough, it's not on the government, this particular decision, but just in general, we need the ministry for explaining. That's what we need. Somebody just to stand in front of it who's apolitical and go, they made this decision based on this bit of evidence. If they did that, I think the country would be a lot better place.
I think is that not called PR?
Well, I was gonna say.
Speaking of comms, we can lead into something else when you're done, Peter.
Well, I was going to say we can call it the Department of Administrative Affairs if we wanted to, I suppose. But, I got it out.
Maybe Jim Hacker. Maybe that's who we need, Jim Hacker.
Another point I wanted to bring up on this is, I brought up the police woman, I should say, Spiner, being broken during that break-in by a sledgehammer. And when he was let off by the jury, we had the leader of the Green Party saying he's very glad for this decision. Which even, I can't remember, I think it was the police union came out to say, well, that's pretty awful. We can't have the leader of a political party that's major as well saying that. But this what seems to be the decision is therefore to appease Green voters, because as you say, there's no other logical reason for it. How can you defend Palestine action?
Yeah.
They've broken spines and sabotaged RAF assets. So to the millions of pounds.
It's ridiculous. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Also, that Polanski needs to go away. I'm sorry, he just needs to go away. He's absolutely terrible for our politics. Like, I don't care. I don't obviously don't agree with his politics, but just the decisions he's making and the things that he's doing for nothing other than gain is not good for the country. It's not. I don't mind reform. I don't mind the Labour Party to a degree. But the things that Polanski's doing, I don't think are in anywhere near the best interest of the country. That's just not at a policy level. I think that's just at a kind of visceral level, for want of a better phrase.
Well, can I just nip in there, Peter B, and say, just as a devil's advocate point there, do you not think sometimes in politics, or indeed in general life, sometimes the very best thing you can do is let somebody make an absolute fool of themselves?
Yeah. I agree with them on that. I agree with you on that. The problem is he's going to have a lot of power at the next general election, and that's my problem.
It's like I said to friends in America. I said friends in America who didn't like Donald Trump, right? And there's quite a few of those. So this was back in the 2020 election, which obviously he didn't win anyway, whatever he says. That, do you know what? He's had one term. Under the Constitution, he can only have another term. If you really don't like him, why don't you just vote for him? Because then he'll be in for another 4 years, but then you'll see the back of him forever. And sometimes what we do in politics is we let people ruin themselves, and I'm afraid it's just part of the game. I mean, I know that's not entirely applicable to what you've been saying. I'm just bringing that in as a side aspect.
No, I agree. That I do agree with.
Yeah, before we move on to Labour, I do want to say on Zach Polanski, I don't think he's actually going to make the next election, to be honest. Because which I think I used to think was quite controversial, but I heard Mike Graham say it on Trigonometry the other day, so I thought, I'm glad I'm not the only one to think this, because at the end of the day, the guy's just a performer and an actor. I don't know if you've seen the clips of him saying when he was part of the Liberal Democrats, he was all, we will protect Israel and things like that, and now obviously he's the most pro-Gaza politician we've ever seen. He doesn't seem to have any sincere positions, and I think as more scrutiny comes down on him, because he's already terrible with his economic defences, it's just, Grace Blakely said this, and Grace Blakely isn't taken seriously by anyone apart from
I'm not going to lie though,
so.
Peter. I will say, I think there is a big there's a big problem with that though, that the guy who literally made a living out of hypnotizing women to have bigger breasts is still doing this well. I don't have much faith in the public scrutiny level as you do.
Well, I don't think it's down to public scrutiny. I think it's just down to that's going to come up every time he's on a panel, and is he going to hack it?
Just to say there, Peter S. It sounded there when you were talking about Zach Polanski, it sounded like you were describing a politician.
Yes,
but they're usually not so blatant on it. I will say Zach Polanski.
We did say a good politician.
Well, also true. They're also better at hiding it usually, but Zach Polanski doesn't. I mean, no one's really asked him about his past in the Lib Dems, and when that comes up more and more, it's especially with the Israel stuff. When Gaza comes up, I think he's going to have trouble squaring that circle. And I think it's just going to have enough of it before anything else. Because the Greens are a mad party. They vote for a leader every 2 years, and if he has a public crash,
did you see yesterday they've been reported to counter-terrorism police?
Oh yes, I did. Yes, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
So
I was like, it took you this long?
Yeah, how's he going to manage that? Because
speaking of you have to remember here, we're talking about. I'm complete agreement with both Peters that I mean, look, you're talking about. It's one of a party that actually had for some time. I mean, look, they've got slightly more sensible with the fact they now have one leader. Because before that, for many, many years, they had co-leaders. And this is a notion that is nonsensical by definition. What happens if they don't agree? It seems there's no lack of nonsense that will come out of that party. I think we probably will all agree on.
Oh. Yeah, the way I always put it is that I think in the long term they are. I mean, they probably won't have a collapse now because, well, as we'll go into, Labour's absolutely woeful, and the Tories aren't. Nobody even really talks about the Tories these days. But I mean, we should probably move on in the interest of time to the problems with Labour, which is they fired Morgan did Morgan McSweeney resign or was he sacked? I think he resigned.
He was resigned. Well, he was resigned. It's the way that I've heard it described.
He jumped before he was pushed,
which
right?
I think is a great phrase, by the way.
Yes, and that comes from the Yes Minister series, doesn't it? It's one of those irregular verbs.
Yeah, it does,
He was resigned.
An irregular verb for a regular individual.
Yeah, which is obviously a result of being mentored by Mandelson, who then he pushed to have as ambassador to the US, and obviously Epstein links. And as I said last week, with it's one of the worst scandals I think I've seen. I was told to get out more, but fair enough. the insider trading, he was getting involved with Epstein. So yes, he's out. Morgan McSweeney's out, and he was the real driver behind Starmerism. And I believe a couple more have either resigned or been sacked. The main one being what's his name? Wormhole?
Yeah, Tim Allen, the director of comms. Tim Allen, the director of comms. He went on.
They have a director of comms.
Yeah, he went. I was on. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I love that there was a director of long-term strategy as well. I was like, well, he's been quiet, hasn't he?
Well, that's the thing. So obviously, so he had McSweeney going on Sunday afternoon around 2 p.m. Now that doesn't happen even in politics. That doesn't happen very often, unless of course you're just trying to bury it, which could well have been the case. Then, of course, we had Tim Allen, who was the director of communications. He went on Monday. So you have that going on the Sunday and the Monday. Now it looks as though they're pushing to, or they have pushed to get rid of Sir Christopher Warnell, who was the successor to Simon Case as Cabinet Secretary. It looks like the whole edifice is falling apart. Now, with that being said, it's being mooted that Warnell, personally, I think he wants out. That it was just one of those where they're trying to reshape, restructure the whole Number 10 operation because the whole thing is a creaking edifice and is simply not working. We then have, we've got influences coming in from the outside. The TSSA trade union, one of the transport unions, has openly come out and said we think Rayner should replace Starmer. So who's in whose pocket there? This kind of thing.
To be fair on that one, sorry, just to be fair, they've never been Starmer's biggest friend. They've openly always said that they prefer Rayner, and Rayner's been, I always say that she's their girl. Like, she's the one that they've always pushed forward. So yeah, and on that one, it's quite interesting. But sorry to interrupt, but do carry on, Patrick.
No, well, to be fair, she's got the accent for it now, hasn't she? And I say that as somebody from the north myself. So there we are. So they're all like, I think the thing is, it is very much, it's like with sharks, isn't it? It's blood in the water. So we see a government basically collapsing. We saw various cabinet ministers being wheeled out to say, no, Starmer's fine. He has my full confidence. That's one of the worst phrases to use in politics. But there we are. But that didn't happen until a bit later on Monday afternoon, when all this was going on. So we see a government in turmoil. When the shark smells the blood in the water, we'll now stick a press release out saying, yes, I know what you're saying, Peter. It's not, it's no secret. But when do you drop these press releases? When do you make these announcements at the time when your opponents appear to be vulnerable? I'm going to, and I'm trying not to segue too much on this one, but I mean, I remember when the plot, I wrote for Comment Home on this one, that against Boris, originally fronted as it was by the Eden era. I was the one who invented the phrase drip, drip, drip. Well, I didn't invent the phrase, but I was the first one who applied it within 24 hours, because I know who reads Comment Home. All the rest of the media were using it. Now, when did they move? Bearing in mind that they were using footage that, one, only about half a dozen people have access to, and two, some of it dated from about a year and a half before. When did they move? They waited until the Owen Paterson scandal, and the government wobbled. Wait for them to wobble, then put your stuff out. That's what people do.
Yeah, it's basically
I agree
basic tactics. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Well,
the one thing.
Go on,
Peter. Go on.
Well,
go on. I'll go. I was going to say, on this one, I actually think this is actually a signal. It's more of a flag to the backbenchers, this one, saying, pick a side, something is coming, pick a side. Because I think a lot of people forget that it's not really to do with the country, it's the internal mechanisms of the Labour Party at the moment. And, I always say the Labour Party makes the Tories look like happy families at times. Like, the factionalism in the Labour Party is absolutely staggering, which really gets me how Starmer has risen so far, so fast, despite having no tribe. He's not part of any group that you can really point to. And I think that's his biggest problem. That's why he was never going to be a good PM. He's no support. There's no team behind him that are willing to kind of go out and bat for him. But yeah, the only reason that they waited so long is basically, from what I've heard, is Starmer basically said, if you don't back me, I'm going to call a general election this afternoon. Like, that was basically it. That he was threatening them, basically saying it's me or a general election, and how do you think you're going to do then? Which I was like, if he did do that, fair play. You've actually got some, guts about you. But it's not necessarily the best thing to do for the country. But yeah, this psychodrama, I hated it when the Tories do it. I hate it when Labour do it. You're supposed to be in charge. You're supposed to be running the country. We've got a lot of problems. Can we just not move on, but can he just go? We put Rayner in, and then we can have a general election. She could go, and then we can all get on with our lives. Because this psychodrama is literally costing us money. It's costing me a hairline. And I don't have enough hours of sleep a day.
Well, It's going
Do
on
it.
till May, I think, is certainly what
I
I'm
think-
thinking.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right. It's one of those where, yeah, just as we were talking about earlier about minimizing your attack surface, some people might even say it shows some degree of political nous. I wouldn't agree, but there was, in this instance, the fact that he doesn't nail his trousers to any mast, minimizing your attack surface. But at the same time, of course, whenever I think of Starmer, the image that comes into my head is that of a slice of cucumber. Completely bland, nothing to it. It's the same as, when people use this dreadful phrase, which I'm afraid I have used myself on occasion. They say, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I say, okay, you have conveyed precisely zero information. And I always think of the slice of cucumber. Then again, the Spanish are no better with queso la será. You have conveyed precisely zero information. And the similar principle in Starmer, if you don't stand for anything, you can't be attacked for much, except for when you make exceptionally poor decisions, which he now has.
Yeah. I always describe it as just a piece of paper. Like, there's just nothing there. Like, and I think to a degree you can say that's a good, a way to rise up a party. You're not nailed down to anything. But when you get into a leadership position, particularly one like the Prime Minister, you do need other pieces of paper to help hold everything together. And I think this is where Starmer has really fallen down. And losing Morgan McSweeney is a major, major blow for him. Now, it's interesting. If you read his resignation speech, he actually says, "I've resigned from the government." He was never a member of the government. He was nothing more than a special advisor with a nicer title. It's very interesting to see how high up he thought he actually was in terms of the system. Now, technically, we all know that obviously Chief of Staff has a lot of power and it's not really a formal position. But I have to admit, the wording in that was very interesting because I'd love to know, is he still advising? Because, the Starmer came out and basically said it was the second best thing since sliced bread. So I wonder if he's still pulling the strings behind the scenes. And if he is, I think that's going to be an even bigger blow for Starmer because he can't even fire anybody correctly.
Well, that is a worry. You've got to remember, the same thing-ish happened with Sue Gray. She was the chief of staff at first. And I think there were various scandals surrounding that. And then that was it. She was gone. I'm led to believe that with Tim Allen going, I think he's the fourth director of comms to go.
Fourth, and he did 5 months.
Which is, again, they had directors of comms. Did any of them do anything?
You can't really blame the comms people. I'm going to say, as a comms guy, I'm going to defend people. You can only spin what you're given, and sometimes you can't spin if you're given nothing to spin. I'm going to say you're not as good as the tool maker, but
and as you know, Peter B, and by the way, are you hosting tonight or guesting tonight or presenter friending tonight?
I'm guesting tonight. I'm guesting,
very good. But you see, as you and I, and in fact all three of us know, since Peter S has been on as well, when you're live, whether in your studio or not, but when you're live, you're thinking very, 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 very fast because you are live and you don't get to do this again. So I indeed don't envy the job of director of comms and that sort of thing, because yes, you'll be expected to give press conferences or host them indeed, and to be going out and saying whatever you've been told to say, which you'll have tweaked, definitely. But to some degree on your advice, but sometimes, and I don't envy cabinet ministers either, who, when there's been in any party, there's been a rather major government scandal, and they get wheeled out, as I would say, as it were, to go and say, oh no. In fact, do you remember Theresa May's policy that Labour branded the dementia tax? That one. Several years,
classic.
And I remember Ian Hislop satirising this. Again, I keep doing their publicity for them, but I haven't got used to you, which back when it was good. And saying, you had at the start of the day, early morning, oh, this is a very good idea. Yes, the cabinet minister's going on air saying, oh, this is a very good idea. And then it's like, she's just pulled in. Oh, this is not a very good idea. It's not easy to perform this role, whether you're a member of the government in whatever capacity, or whether you are doing the PR. You have to remember as well, the now Lord Cameron, he was a PR man before he went.
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the what we would say the slicker ones obviously come have a PR background because they're just more media aware. But I do think that when it comes to the number 10 operation, it's interesting to what they're doing now is they've siloed it, because obviously we've got to have this big data dump of all these documents that's going to go to this the ISC committee. What they're doing is they're splitting off. It's classic crisis comms play. Is they've got two chiefs of staff now. One is going to do the day-to-day stuff, and one has to focus on this document, this leak, and all the vandals and stuff. Because they've now got the problems of a police investigation. They've got Parliament looking into it. The press is not going to let this drop at all. So yeah, they're really sticking it out. But I do think now it's more about protecting the Labour brand. It's not about protecting Starmer. I think they're trying to just hobble this together till they get to the general election, because I don't think they actually see a future for Starmer within the internal mechanisms of the party. I think very much it's just, we're going to use you as a sponge, soak it all up, and then we're just going to get rid of you, because that's the only use he's going to have for them now. I can't see any way out of it other than he's that ignorant to the political arena that he'll just try and stick it out. But I don't think he's that dumb, although I might be being generous.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know about the ignorant point, but I think that's exactly what happened to Boris and the Tories. You know, he was useful to win that election and get Brexit done. Anyway, remember that. You know, but as soon as you become a liability to the rest of the party. With that said, you know, who was it? It was Starmer. It was down to him, Lisa Nandy, I believe,
Rebecca Long Bailey.
Yeah, Rebecca Long Bailey. And I think everyone just looked at him and thought, well, I don't really see how much harm he can do. Versus the radical policy of the others. Now they're finding he's turned out to be a bit useless. And the thing is, my honest sentiment on this is, I think it's. Do you know the thing that your parents say to you when they say, you know, we're not angry, we're just disappointed?
It's the worst thing in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those where I think it's a sort of like, I don't really think anybody's all that surprised. But you've got to remember that the point of a political party is to get into power so you can pass laws and do things. Sir Keir Starmer, I think, was seen as the best vehicle at the time for achieving that goal. It's like what people get on the other side of the coin. You look at CCHQ, and anyone who's a Tory party insider knows perfectly well CCHQ's job is to win elections.
I don't think people at CCHQ know that.
Well, not very many as of the past couple of years. But my point is simply to say it's not about policy. It's not about personalities. It's about saying, can we win an election? What the sodding hell we do after that, God knows. But that is an FTCC job, you see. So that's all they'll focus on. And I'm sure it's the same as Southside.
Yeah, I agree.
Southside.
Yeah. There is one thing we haven't brought up yet with the whole the Labour S-Houser, as I put it before. Anna Sarwar came out to say that actually, I think that Keir Starmer should resign, and absolutely nobody backed him. Nobody.
Because people didn't know who he was.
Partially that, but also there's another reason for that. Well, the Welsh First Minister he didn't really say anything, and then he said, no, I'm not going to go with him because of how much backlash he got. But I think in reality what's happened there is Anna Sarwar's probably losing his seat on the 5th of May. Everyone in Westminster's keeping it for another 3 years. So
yeah, pretty much. I have a feeling there might have been some attempt to push him out, maybe by people out, a few maybe junior cabinet ministers, maybe, you know, the Welsh guy, maybe that might have been an idea, and they all went, oh, we're not doing that, and then he went ahead and did it, and they just didn't tell him. I don't know. I can see that being a very real thing, but I have to admit, I found that interesting because I did get the feeling that somebody else was supposed to say something. It was a bit kind of, you know, like you're waiting for your double act to appear on stage with you, and they didn't reappear after the magic trick. I think it had that vibe to it, definitely. Because I was like, that seems a weird thing to just do on your own, particularly like without any political support. It's an odd move, which makes me think that it was part of a coordinated move, and nobody went through with it.
Yeah.
Well, it could be one of those where it's like you've stopped your all in the water, and or one of those where you're like, run up the flagpole and see who salutes. You know that phrase. You know, it could simply have been. I don't disagree with your other theories, Peter, but it's They're all possibilities, but yeah, I think it could simply be, I wonder what happens if I do this.
Yeah, it also could have been a way of, for the Starmer lot, if you wanted to go proper House of Cards, for Starmers to see who's loyal and who's not. It could have been a bit of a test on an internal thing, because yeah.
Do you in fact think then that this could be a bit of a reverse ferret? That it could even be planned by the other side. Oh, let them say this, and then as you say, we'll find out who's loyal and who isn't. Given that, as you said earlier, Peter, nobody really knows who he is. This guy.
Yeah, there is an argument for that. I can see it, but then again, it's always a big problem with conspiracy theories. I'm asking very incompetent people to do something very competent and not tell anybody about it, which makes me think that most conspiracies in this country cannot be true.
Well, and indeed anybody in politics. I mean, ego kind of goes with it. People kind of doing things quietly behind the scenes is what's normally, at least ostensibly, supposed to be reserved for the civil service. But in politics, then again, all three of us are in politics, and we all know perfectly well that, for example, if you don't do your own self promo, it's not like anyone else is going to do it for you. So, that kind of thing. Everyone who is in politics, who is inclined in that way, well, they will be inclined in that way in order to be in politics and even be vaguely successful. And we have to remember, he is the Scottish Labour leader. He's worked his way up the ladder to a certain degree. Sadly, yes, nobody's heard of him, but that's not really the point. He's got somewhere. This was certainly, if we look at it just purely through his own lens, this is a big risk. So why?
Well, that's why I'm pretty convinced that, he knows he's losing his seat and going to have no power in 2 months' time. So he may as well make a power move. But then again, because no one from Westminster is going to make any move before May, because realistically they all want the headshot proof that this will be that, you lost 1 million seats in Wales and Scotland. How can you keep leading this party? And then they'll either hope he resigns after that, which he won't because he's pig-headed, and so they'll have to do a leadership challenge.
That's the big thing they're getting wrong, isn't it? Because they need him to be they need a logical reason other than he's just a bit terrible, like for him to go. So if you take that, you'd lose 1 million seats. Obviously, that's the perfect excuse. They're pretty clean in kind of pushing him out the window. The problem is they'll probably push him out the wrong window on the ground floor, and he'll, like you said, he'll just walk back in because they're not very good at this, the Labour Party. The one thing I will give the Tories, when they stab somebody in the back, they twist the knife. They know that they're not coming back. It's unlikely that they come back. The Labour Party, they don't have that ruthless edge as much as they like to think they do to really be that kind of Machiavellian party. But
two soft left wingers.
Well, either of the Peters. I mean, I have to say, I'm probably the only one here who's actually been a member of the Labour Party, but even I don't know, what their equivalent is, if they have one, for the Tories, the men in grey suits, as they're known.
I just presume it's people with straight fringes and blue hair.
Sounds a bit Haryan.
Possibly.
Sorry, I thought you said blue eyes.
Well, they left and went to the Greens. Sorry, I forgot. They were Corbynistas. They left and went to the Green Party, didn't they?
Yeah, sorry, I thought you said blue eyes. Yeah, that would be the Aryans. Yes, the blue hair. You're very right. That's the Greens. You would have thought they'd have green hair, but never mind that. So, but anyway, as I say, I don't know. And I think the trigger at the moment for Labour is 80 MPs.
Yes, it's 20% of the
to do something. I just don't know. I was never involved in any of those procedures when I was a member of the Labour Party, because we all know who it used to be when it was the Tories. It was Sir Graham Brady, and it's now not Sir Graham Brady. It's someone else who is the person you would send those confidential letters of no confidence to. I just don't actually know how you do it in Labour. I think, where do you send them? There's somewhere you send them, but I'm afraid not where.
I don't forget the Labour Party is specifically designed so it is difficult to get rid of the leader because it's so factionless, because of all the different branches. It's not like the Tories where it is a basic hierarchy. It's designed this way, which I think a lot of Labour people might start to maybe change the internal workings of the Labour Party, given what we've seen over Corbyn and Starmer now. I think we might see just maybe a more factionalist break-up of the Labour movement, more so than we've probably ever seen. I can see that happening. And obviously you've got the Tory reform split, but I do think the fractures of the Labour Party are now so irreparable, I think, that the Greens look like they might be a bit of a player, and then if they get another trade union movement and You know, you might get this net zero lot. They might want to club together. It could be interesting to see what happens to the left of British politics, much more so than the right, because the right, I think, is pretty much set now in its different three different groups. But the left is going to be, pass the popcorn. I'm going to enjoy this.
Well, the thing is, as anyone who follows Wolves knows, we do quite a lot of reporting on the very, very far left. I can share now, interestingly, despite this whole week, they've been silent. So they're either biding their time, or they just haven't noticed, because most of them have been kicked out of the Labour Party by now anyway.
True. Or, I think a lot will be looking to see how the Greens do at the by-election.
I was going to say, or they're just joining the Greens, yeah. Because Gorton and Denton by-election, that's still going on. That's just mostly just flinging of nonsense between Matt Goodwin and Hannah Spencer, the Green Party representative. Nobody cares about any of the others from the looks of it, which I think Labour are going to do slightly better than
Downing Street on fire. You got Downing Street on fire. I think it's difficult for people to care.
That is also true, yeah. But I did give a listen to a bit of that hustings, and it was a lot of.
I listened to it a little bit, and I was like, nope.
Well, you know what's happening. It's Matt Goodwin versus Hannah. Everyone else saying, "Oh, but I'm a Liberal Democrat. I'm good. I was a police chief representing the Labour Party." So it's the Conservative Party. That one was, yeah. So.
Well, see, this is the thing. I mean, it's we've had this at Wolves before. The date when we published the story about Momentum's massive electoral malpractice during the 2019 election, which, as it happens, was also on a Friday the 13th. Oh, look, we've come full circle. But that was also the day they closed. This is 2020. They closed. It was either the pubs or the schools. I can't remember now. So that story got completely buried. And for both Matt and Hannah, I look at this and I think, my God, he didn't pick the best time to try and go into this. Then again, I ran for council in 2019 in May, but this was the first time, with the Conservative Party under Theresa May having failed to leave the European Union on the 29th of March. Good God, you remember. This was the first time the voters had any opportunity to punish the Conservative Party, even if it's only local councils, and this is basically bins and dog mess and potholes. It was probably the worst time I could possibly have chosen to run, but sometimes people do that. And with that said, we didn't win, but there was actually a swing to us. There was. Because I actually went out on the doorstep and canvassed. And it's not so much leafleting. Well, there were. In fact, I've still got about 1,000 leaflets in my car.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of
just throw them away, man.
As I say.
£150 that cost me because they weren't going to pay for it. But there we are. There was actually a swing to us. And we've talked before, and I think I know Peter S. You have certainly talked about this before, about certain younger figures who like to make a splash, but you've tried putting them on the doorstep. I don't know what you think.
I don't. Yeah. Well, again, I'll have more experience this next week. I'm planning to go to Gorton and Denton next Saturday. So.
Oh, are you? Oh,
I am. Yes. Yeah. So I will get some on the ground reporting hopefully for the week of the election. I think that's the election week, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that will be interesting actually.
Yeah, because
I have a feeling that. There's not a lot of national buzz about it, but I wonder what it's like actually on the ground there, because there's going to be a lot of activists, there's going to be a lot of cameras, there's a lot of journalists obviously going to be there. So it will be interesting because this is probably the most high-profile by-election we've had in a long time, really, because I think this is going to be the start of our new politics, a start of kind of a lot more factionalism, a lot more tactical voting, a lot more kind of narrative building rather than actual policies. I think this is the future, and I'm not particularly looking forward to it, if I'm being honest.
Well, hopefully it'll all settle down my next election, but I think that's me being too optimistic again. I want to say the Runcorn by-election. I remember the Runcorn by-election being all over the news when that was going on, and there was less Labour National news getting in the way of that one, especially after Sarah Poacher won. That was an earthquake. I remember that. But no, it will be interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll still be an interesting one, especially because the run up to it's been less focused all around Gorton and Denton. So It's I do have to say I don't think Matt Goodwin would run for that unless he thought he could win, because he is a professional pollster, so or was anyway. So I think it'd be
Well,
interesting.
please do remember me to Matt Goodwin when you meet him.
I will. Yeah, I will mention
He
if
did
I
reach
see
out
it.
to me. He got our business card. He did reach out to me. He said he wanted to connect. I've been in touch with him a couple of times. Well, not. I've emailed him back a couple of times. He's not responded. So please do let me know.
I will. Well, he may be very big. He seems to be canvassing from 5 in the morning till 10 in the evening or something at the moment. So I don't know if he'll have time anytime soon. But
well, this is one of those things where we can all sort of S all over politicians, but in reality, it's quite a big job, trying to get elected. Now, the cynical version of this is that politicians their primary skill set is getting elected, their secondary skill set is getting re-elected, and their tertiary skill set, if you're bloody lucky, might actually happen to involve being of some use once elected. So that's the cynical view. But it is a big job. In fact, I was told once, the money's changed since then, but I was told once on average it cost about £18,000 to run a successful election campaign, which you may or may not be helped with. It also depends on how important the seat is to your party.
Yes.
And so, I mean, there was, for Crewe and Nantwich in the 2019 election, there was a war chest gifted of about £40,000. The association was running out of money. Why? Because it was the 5th most marginal seat in the country, with a Labour MP sitting with a majority of 48. So that was clearly a target seat, and that was why they did it. But they don't do it unless they have a reason to do it. The rest of the stuff you have to do by yourself. So I can wrap up this section, I think, by just saying, look, okay, guys, these politicians, as whatever you might think of them, at the end of the day, they do have to put the effort in.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And people just don't realize a lot of this stuff, but what actually goes on, because the idea that anybody goes into politics for money, I'm going to say, is just laughable.
Well, it certainly is. They're often, I would say particularly Tory, but now in Labour circles as well, they're often taking a pay cut compared to their, shall we say, in relative terms, peers.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more.
I think with that we can move on to our last topic, though, which is Rupert Lowe's rape gang inquiry has been going on for a couple of weeks, and it did come to an end today. Seemed to get some big names on the inquiry panel, such as Nick Timothy, I think, turned up one day, and a KC whose name I can't remember. I have not seen any impact from this whatsoever, I have to say. Nobody seems to care.
And I find that very concerning. If I'm being honest, people can have their opinions on Rupert Lowe if they like, but this was the closest we've got to any kind of rape gangs inquiry, the closest we've got on any kind of movement on this particular subject, and nobody's taking it seriously. Given some of the things I've read that have come out of this, I have to admit it is horrific. It is appalling, and the fact that nobody seems to really be paying that much attention, yet we all care so much about the Epstein victims. And yet we've got this happening at the same time. I can't help but feel a lot of it is a bit oh, well, it's just Rupert Lowe doing his thing. We're not taking it seriously, and I think that's a big, big problem. I know people don't like Rupert and all the rest of it, but I do think the issue deserves to be taken a lot more seriously than pretty much most of Westminster's taking it, I have to admit, because some of the things that have come out of it, the accounts and all the rest of it, you think it's bad, and then you listen to it and you're like, no, I'm not listening to this anymore, because it is that bad.
Well, okay, I'll just counterpoint for challenge there for devil's advocate. If you want it taken seriously, why don't you have it carried out by someone serious? And I think what Westminster is doing is looking at that and saying he's one independent MP, he's doing this by himself because he's decided he has the authority to do this. Now, I am reminded of, do you remember remember when Boris prorogued Parliament? Yeah. And then all the Caroline Lucas types, they decided to go off and have their own separate parliament, didn't they? An independent parliament that had absolutely no power whatsoever. So this is quite simply an exercise. Quite simply an exercise in making yourselves feel like you've got something to be doing, because you haven't. And when I look at this and the whole Restore Britain Britain movement as well. I mean, this it's just got no power. It's got no ability to fix anything. So if you want an inquiry taken seriously, commission it properly, have it done by KCs or whatever. There is no point in private citizens, and I can agree this maybe should not be the case, but there's no point in private citizens, including MPs, which they still technically are, just going out and talking to people. I haven't seen any proof of this evidence. I do not suggest it is, look, I will reveal I have been subject to childhood sexual abuse. Okay, so I do know how people may well feel, but the point is, if you want something like this done properly, do it properly, and if you don't, because you're just trying to prove a point because you think nobody's listening to you, you're basically just screaming into the wind. You're shouting from the sidelines. Nobody is going to take it seriously. What should happen is that this kind of thing is commissioned properly and carried out properly, and I think that's why most people are not paying attention to it.
Because there is
well,
no.
I would push back a little bit and say, well, we rather tried, didn't they? They rather tried to have this commission, but it got hijacked by every other political party who had a even bigger ego problem, I think, than Rupert Lowe's ever accused of. I have to admit, I understand the point that, it needs to be done formally, but Rupert's doing this because he can't get it through formally, because this issue is so political when it shouldn't be. Again, I'm not an advocate of Rupert Lowe in any way, but I'm just saying this issue shouldn't be as political as it has become. And every political party is using it, no matter what they say, for their own purposes to attack another political party. And I don't think that's right. And I think Rupert's taking the lead on it individually, because he's actually the one that's saying that we need to fix something, not just keep throwing mud at each other. And I think that's why he's done it. I'm not really into this whole Rupert Lowe's got the biggest ego in politics, because I really don't think he does. I think there's a lot
everyone has an ego in politics
in that area.
I mean, one thing I would point out is that I've kept a close eye on it, and every time there seems to be a new witness testimony put out, not long after that, there's Rupert Lowe or a Restore Britain official account saying, why aren't the BBC reporting on this? And then someone added, I think it was Alison Pearson, like, why aren't the Telegraph reporting on this? And her reply was, well, I'm trying to, but they don't let media in. So how can they complain that the media aren't reporting on something they've impeded the media on reporting on?
Well, there's a difference between letting the media in on the proceedings. Well, again, you would have the media will be in on the proceedings itself. What you'd have is a spokesperson to do the thing afterwards. It's not. I don't think that's not really fair of Alison to say that they don't let us in, so therefore we can't write about it. There's lots of things you don't.
I think she was writing about it, but
I think that's a bit of a. Yeah, but I hear this a lot. I've seen it on Twitter and everything, where people are like, oh, well, they don't let this in, they don't do that. It's not really the point Rupert's trying to make there, I don't think. But again, I just think this issue needs to be so less political than it's become. It really does.
I think probably the reason for all of this is that a lot of people, especially those in the media, are going to look at this as essentially a stunt, and so a lot of people will see it as that and then say, is this really worth our time? And then if there are also media not being let in, well, they're going to go, hey, well, guys, we tried. But I think really this is part of my issue with this whole thing. I don't contest any of the evidence, except for, I think, Peter S. You had something you want to say about that. But let me finish. But it's one of those where I think it does, to me, just by political instinct, smack of a stunt, and therefore people won't take it seriously, and that's why I wish it had been done properly, because then there would be no excuse for people to say, oh, he's just doing his own thing and holding his own inquiry as though he's somehow got the authority or the position to actually do this, which in fact he does not. And then you therefore have the lack of scrutiny as to where this evidence is coming from and whether or not it is legitimate, which needs to be determined properly. I'm not going to sit here and make judgments about any of it, but other people, I think, privately will. And then, especially if the media are turned away from things like this, they will then say, well, look, you clearly don't care. That's the best way to brush up the press. Peter S., you were going to say.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I'm more on the side of Patrick here with this seems more like a political stunt, which I do agree this should be less political, but it's hard to say it's not political when every other day Rupert Lowe saying, "Oh, Reform say that they actually care about rape gang survivors. Why aren't they joining my my rape gang panel and what have you?"
Well, it's a good question. It's a fair question. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, Nick Timothy joined.
Or is it that Nigel didn't want to do it, so therefore Reform didn't do it?
Well, maybe. But,
I mean, we talk about egos.
Well, I know. Well, yeah, as I say, every politician has an ego. But I mean, Nick Timothy joined it, and what's been the result of that? So far, not a lot. So it's kind of, what's the point at the moment? Plus, that's Rupert making it political, frankly, but still. Yeah, I mean, I will go through a quick what happened to me on Twitter today story of the Rape Gang Inquiry put out a witness, a rape gang survivor's testimony of, I will read it verbatim. "It was all the white girls in every home that I went to, and I mean, I've seen girls locked. I remember a man opening the back of a van and I saw maybe 15, 20 girls locked in dog cages, looked like they were all on drugs." Now, I quote tweeted that and said, "Is it okay to say I find the idea of 15 dog cages with girls in the back of a van a bit far-fetched?" And I wasn't the only person to say that. I probably wouldn't have said anything if I didn't see other people questioning this, to which I had an absolute torrent of replies basically saying if I don't believe this, it's basically akin to denial. To which I think, am I not allowed to say I need a bit more evidence to believe all this witness testimony? I'm not calling her a liar.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
I'm not saying none of this.
Yeah,
happened,
no, you're right. You are right. Yeah. But again, I think this is the bit where it's the weaponization of the issue again.
Yes,
from both
definitely.
sides, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, what it comes down to as well is ultimately, if you're, the other problem I had is that the Rape Gang Inquiry, they were basically putting this out as fact because their comment on it was it's all so much worse than anybody realizes, and I just think you can't really throw that out and act like it's fact when it's just a witness testimony. And it's not really obvious from that comment you're treating it that way. If you're treating it as fact, and it turns out not to be, you've undermined your own inquiry. And if you do that, like, because this sort of thing, especially from people on the right, like Rupert Lowe, you know, there's going to be holes all over it, it's pierced by people like Emily Maitlis, and you can't give them ammunition. That's why it has to be so careful, and why, as I'm with Patrick here, it has to be done properly. Yeah.
Done. Finish.
I think that's it.
Okay, well, what I was going to say is, look, yeah, I can see this from both sides because I don't fundamentally disagree with anything you're saying. But, I mean, I'm too careful about saying this, but I was in armed combat 2 years ago. I was attacked while I was defending a woman, a female resident at the place where I was living. He was armed with one of those awful things, the zombie knives, you know, those things.
Yeah.
I also had a blade with me. It's certainly not a zombie knife. It's much more professional than that. I am proficient with a blade. I saw him threatening this woman. So I have, by the way, Peter B, I have spoken about this on Talk. You can find this on my show. I decided I would not permit this situation to continue. So I went outside. And as I took up that weapon and went out of that door, I did not know I was coming back through it again. I could have been killed. In the end, I defeated and disarmed that opponent, and he went. However, there was no CCTV footage at the time. There wouldn't have been. I cannot prove that any of this actually happened. First bit is actually quite funny because he brandished, I've got a knife. And I then flipped my blade and said, yes, mate, mine's bigger. Which it was, to be fair. I was asked by the Housing Association, why did you not report this to the police? And I said, I can tell you exactly why. Because, one, I can barely remember what this lad, was like 19, I think, looked like. I don't know his name. I don't know where he lives. I cannot prove that any of this ever happened. It did, but I could just be making it up. I think you can see the point I'm speaking to here. I cannot prove it, but I know it happened. I also know I was injured, although at least not killed. So it's one of those where you think, look, like I say, I can't prove that ever happened, but I know it did. And as to why would I not report it to the police, I'll tell you exactly why. Because I can't identify this young man, I don't know who he is, where he lives, but blah, blah, blah. What will happen if I report it to the police is that I will go down on somebody's list. They've always got lists of having been associated with blade use. He will not, because I can't identify him. There is therefore net zero positive benefit to me in reporting it to the police. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Okay? So sometimes when you think about these witness testimonies, I think there is a deficit in proper scrutiny here, and that is why, as I think Peter S. agrees with me, it ought to be done more properly and verified. But there are some things, and I will stick with Peter B here, where there are some things that you can't actually prove, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we're all on the same page of understanding this is a very tricky issue to manage, and that's why we need proper scrutiny.
Definitely. Yeah, I just think I think you have to ask the reason why is this happening. It's interesting that you guys jumped on it's a stunt, and I think we're so jaded and so used to politicians being in it for themselves that this is therefore the automatic reaction that he's doing it for attention, that he's doing it for himself, and yet we could actually just trying to be a decent politician and pushing forward an issue to which Parliament has shown it has no ability to command on. The government doesn't want this to happen. It's evidently clear. And yet nobody could decide what to do. So you might not have the kind of official authority to do it, but I think it's his way of saying, I'm trying to do something here, more on the lines of why isn't everybody else? So I can see it from that perspective. I try not to be as jaded this year as I usually am, but I just think it's interesting that was the automatic, oh, it's a stunt. And I see it everywhere. I see everyone's comments on it. And I'm like, he could just be trying to do the right thing that everybody else has been shown they're not willing to do. And I don't know. Yeah, the way they jump on you on Twitter and stuff like that, I think that's horrific. But I have to admit, that is part and parcel of the parcel. Is everything has to be this side or that side? Yeah, you get used to it after a while. But it's such a dichotomy now, isn't it? Everything has to be black or white. Nothing can live in the grey, despite the fact our entire lives are lived in the grey. It's just astounding to me that we get stuck in these circles all the time.
It occurs to me as well, Peter, that I think Rupert himself is actually quite jaded, which I don't use as an insult. I simply mean to say, I mean, look, he stepped back from reform, or was kicked out of it, or whatever it was. And yes, just as you say, he's not been able to get this done any other way, but that has jaded him to the point where now he's like, I don't really know what else I can do. He feels rejected by the party that got him elected, that is worth pointing out, and a parliament, as you say, that will not do anything about this. And I think you get to almost this kind of desperate point, in fact, where you feel this is the only thing you can do. The trouble is that doesn't work in politics, because the media will be all over you, pointing out, who the hell are you, mate? That kind of thing. And the way that Restore Britain has gone about this, I'm sad to say, because I know some of the people in it, is that we are going to do this thing ourselves. We are going to point all of this out. Oh, and we have a foothold in the House of Commons. Yeah, are you Rupert? Yes.
Till 2029,
Yeah, yes, because if reform stands against them, which they will, he'll be out. But my point is, yes, you've got one MP. It kind of has an air of desperation around it, which we can either be jaded around, or we can sympathise with. But as you say also, Peter, perhaps there is a middle way of thinking about this.
Yeah, I just think it's just one of those really, really important issues that predictably and rather sadly became such a political football that, you just kind of thought maybe just once we can all put down our tools and all put down our weapons and maybe try and fix something that's really important. Because I can't help but notice recently, over the last 5 years, the number of stories that have involved children or people under the age of 18 and safety concerns has skyrocketed. And we don't seem to do very much about it other than blame each other for it. I don't know, just be nice just to maybe fix something for a kid. I don't know, call me old-fashioned, but I thought that's what we were supposed to do as a nation. But unfortunately, politics always seems to bury those people down, I'm afraid.
Well, and the other trouble is, if you gather all this testimony, if we presume for the sake of right now that all of this is legitimate and genuine, you gathered it in this way. if there is then a fully legitimised inquiry without, well, by which I mean to say with some actual authority, well, that material has already been collected, but it's been collected under terms that will probably not be accepted, or quite possibly not accepted by a more, legitimised inquiry. And in fact, what you've basically done then, in fact, is the counter of what you wanted. You've wasted it.
Yeah, I don't know on the specifics, because I know that they were on about wanting to use the testimony to push for private prosecution. So it must have been done under some kind of legal bounds for it to even exist in the first place. But I'd have to look into the actual specifics on that. But I do know that Rupert's team were basically saying that we're going to use it to push for the private prosecutions, and particularly those who knew about from like the kind of the councillors and all those who worked within the local authorities, rather than say the perpetrators of the actual crimes. It's more the people that have covered it up. I think that was the main target, from what I understand. But again, it's just one of those things that it's so wide ranging that I don't know whether we've really got the attention span for something this big as a nation. I think a lot of us will turn away because of the horrific nature of it. A lot of us will turn away because we don't like to think that people turn their backs on kids, but also just it's that big and complex that this country doesn't do that anymore. We're not good at that. We used to be, but we're not good at it anymore.
Well, this is what I suggest to Rupert Lowe, I think, really is that I think there's a need for transparency around this. That you have to bear in mind for the admissibility of evidence to the courts. They need to know how it was obtained, whether this was done in a legitimate manner, and what is actually going to happen with how the data is provided for a start. And it's all very well putting it out on Twitter, and clearly they have anonymized it. But just as I was saying earlier about my experience of armed combat, I mean, I could be making all that up.
Yeah.
There's no way to prove it. I'm not making it up.
No.
But I could be making it up, and there's no way anyone would know. Yeah. So you could have had someone write those statements to make them deliberately shocking. And as you were pointing out earlier, some of what is said there appears to be doubtful. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it is, because like I say, I mean, I didn't expect at 9:15 in the morning that morning to be going out and actually engaging in armed combat because I was defending somebody. But and it sounds like an almost unbelievable story. I mean, it is London. Yeah. So
yeah. I mean, just to finish off on the point of why specifically, because that's not the first one I've thought that's a bit far fetched. But I've not commented on the others because, as we say, they could be true. But you're seeing over a dozen other girls in the back of a truck put in dog cages. You would have thought that would be corroborated by other witnesses, but obviously cover up, they've not heard it, things like that. Plenty of reasons that could happen, but I simply questioned it. We're a little skeptical on this. Is that okay? The answer's no, apparently. But anyway, I think my overall take from the inquiry has been, I don't think it's going to do an awful lot. I personally didn't donate to the fund. The fund's going toward what people seem to be happy with, so be it. I'm not going to go out of my way and say this was terrible and pointless or anything like that, because I don't necessarily believe that. But we'll see where it goes. But I wouldn't expect it to go too far. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. This is the point we were discussing about earlier. Is the legitimacy of it and how it will be viewed in other people's minds.
Yeah.
Like the courts, like Parliament.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you don't want it to undermine anything about genuine rape gang survivors and things like that either, which there is a risk of, but I think they've done what they can to avoid that, to be fair to them.
And the other thing is to add to that is that if you go out and you do these things by yourself because nobody else will do it, do you think that is going to endear you to the people who haven't done it? So the reality is they'll probably ignore you out of sheer spite.
No,
in fact, what you've done, you've not helped yourself. You've not helped yourself, and you've not helped them.
And if they do get in power and they do have an official inquiry, they're not going to want you to be part of it because of how spiteful you've been, possibly justifiably over the past few months. But anyway, I think with that we'll leave it there because Peter B did have to just run off there. So we'll
yes, he's going off on telly.
Yes, lucky man, lucky man. So he did say thank you for being on, but had to run off during an edit, as I say. So I could edit that in, but I'm not going to bother. But thank you anyway, Patrick, for coming on too.
Yes, thank you very much. I shall put out, I think I actually forgot to put out last week's podcast, so I'll do both at the same time, but there we go. And if you send it to me tomorrow, then we can,
Yep, it will be there. It will be there, so I'll send that as well. Right, with that, thank you all very much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.